and welcome to another episode of the Bionic Water-colourist. Okay, so this is Railroad Tracks. That's the project, and we're doing part 2. This is the second take of our project. So the last video we left you with a railroad track, and we put some lines in and the whole 9 yards. And so I've done some penciling in, and this is what I've come up with so far. So I just wanted to talk to you about this for a second, because first of all, we basically left with me just drawing a few of these, but I had to draw them all the way down the line, and that's not easy, especially when you want to keep them square. So all the way up. So it takes a while. Then what I did is I put up the telephone poles, as you saw. And then, of course, we had a little bit of slack in them. And then the poles. These, believe it or not, are actually all vertical. But to the eye, to me, that one looks a little out. But always trust your eye. And in nature, of course, nothing is perfect. If you look at a row of telephone poles, they're not lined up perfectly. And the same is here. This is a barbed wire fence. Now, I added this afterwards. So basically, I had to put in 4 extra lines. So I put in a top line, and that becomes the top of the thing, of the top of the different fence posts. But you have to erase those, and then you go just below, because there's always 3 wires on a fence post, on a barbed wire fence. If you are, anybody who's a country prairie boy or whatever, they'll know that. And the other thing is you have to have, for some reason, if this is slack, you have to have these tight. If you have droopy fence posts and barbed wire fence, people notice it. I don't know why, but again, we're trying to use this selective attention so that the brain will accept what we're putting in front of it. So here is the next thing we did is I put in a couple of bales of hay. What I just wanted to do was to get the shadowing. Okay, so that you have to line up so that the sun and the shadows are lining up together, because, technically we should really have a shadow that comes up here from so one could argue that shadow is coming there. So that shadow is now, so you have to, and then you have to go and you have to draw all the shadows in. Here we don't have any shadows. So if we were doing the shadows the same way, we would be and now you got your shadows. So it's all a question of just doing the details. It's not easy, and it takes patience, but that's what patience is all about. You know, you have to develop patience. You just don't flick a switch, and especially in today's society, you don't flick a switch and all of a sudden you go from running 8,000 miles an hour, you know, to going 0. Now I want to talk about mountains for a minute. I have 3 different mountains that I put down here. The first mountain, right over here, first of all 3 of these mountains are sedimentary rock. And of course, we know the difference between igneous rock and sedimentary rock is that igneous or metamorphic rock, or whatever you want to call it, comes out of a volcano or deep within the earth, and it has a different type of structure than a sedimentary rock. A sedimentary rock is made from a sea. So basically deposits over, you know, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of years have developed different layers, and of course heat and pressure have turned them into rock. And for instance, sandstone is a sedimentary rock. And so here we have different sedimentary rocks. But I want to talk about what the formation looks like. And so this one here, but we're going to start with this one first. So if I was to turn this and we looked at it this way, so that this was the surface of the earth, over time, sediments are pitched as the oceans, you know, just like, you know, they're driven down, another layer gets on top, and then it's driven down, and then another layer on top, and eventually it gets compacted to the point where, you know, it's way down there. And then what happens is, of course, is we have the event of the plate tectonics of the Pacific plate crashing into the central North American plate, and all of a sudden everything gets lifted up. And so this is the underground edge. And so as that eruption took place, we all of a sudden, this is the surface end, so it's straight. And then this is the jagged end, because that's basically been torn as the earth, the pressures in the earth have torn everything up, like so. So what's happened is we have these things. Now, these are called bedding planes. And that's a geological term for the orientation of the sedimentary layers within the sedimentary rock. And so we have that here, and we also have it here. So in this one, these are at an angle. Now, I just made this one up. This you would probably not see in nature, because the bedding planes in a particular area are usually consistent. So if you did a thing of the Rockies and you did one mountain and then the mountain beside it, 9 times out of 10, the bedding planes are going to be the same. If you don't respect the bedding planes, it can look stupid if you got one mountain going one way and the other mountain, going one way and the other mountain going the other way. It depends. If it really happens in nature, it happens in nature. But this, for instance, this type of mountain is something you'd find in Utah, or it always reminds me of the Four Corners State Park. And so, but their bedding planes are here. And so what happens is but what's caused the erosion in here and here is the wind. So just the way things are going, this is a little harder, and this is staying up, and then of course the wind's going through here and picking up sand, and it's eroding in here. And that's how these things are made. And then last but not least, when we look at this is like a razorback. If you look at the mountains of Japan, it's like a razorback. And the way that works is if we were to use this as an example. So instead of it being at, whatever that is, 30 degrees, 35 degrees, what happens is that thing bends to 90 degrees. So like that, and then what happens is everything erodes away until you get this. So this is really one of these, but it's harder. So the soft side, this side, which is softer, which is a different type of sedimentary rock, is obviously worn away. And so is this one. And this one is left, and it's a harder layer. But it was turned 90 degrees instead of 30 degrees, and that's all that's standing. And so if you look at Japan, if you look at, there's places all over the place that have mountains that look like the back of a dragon. So those are basically three different kinds of sedimentary mountains, or, and they're all put behind the horizon line. So that means they're actually farther away, but our brain knows that because, we just know that this is where the horizon line is, even though we have stuff now. Now, last but not least, we have clouds. Now, those are three-dimensional as well. So we have to remember that they go, they go from short, from close to far. So we have to put a bit of shading, and then I just put a little bit of color in there to give it the illusion that there's some sort of finish to it. So I'm just going to sit here. I've spoken long enough on this project. Finish it. Go start it. Do it the way I did it. If you have to rewatch it, the only part I didn't do was showing you how to do the actual. I didn't put in the barbed wire fence until I stopped the last episode. So just do the same thing as over here. It's just you do it at a lower space. Just figure it out. You don't have to measure anything. Just make it up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch up with you next time for another exercise on the Bionic Water-colourist.